The Crimson Dawn was a space station that floated near a giant planet made of gas. It was old and dirty and full of creatures from 100 different worlds. Some came to trade, some came to hide, some came because they had nowhere else to go. The station had no real laws. The strong did what they wanted, and the weak learned to stay quiet. Park walked through the lower market with her hands in her pockets. She was 24 years old, small and thin, with black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her gray jumpsuit had oil stains on the sleeves, and her boots were worn from years of walking on metal floors. She looked like what she was, a cargo worker from Earth. Nothing special, nobody important. She had been on the station for 3 days now. Her crew had come to sell refined metals and buy medical supplies. It was simple work, boring work, the kind of job that paid just enough to keep their small ship flying. Captain Sung handled the negotiations, kept the engines running. Shin provided security, though he spent most of his time playing cards in their rented cargo bay, and moved boxes, checked seals, and counted inventory. The market was loud and crowded. Tall creatures with scales pushed past short creatures with fur. Insect-like beings clicked and buzzed at each other. Floating robots carried goods through the air. The smell was terrible, a mix of alien food, machine oil, and too many bodies in too small a space. Bought a small container of noodles from a vendor and found a quiet corner to eat. She watched the crowd as she ate, studying the different species the way she always did. It was a habit she had developed over 3 years of space travel. Watch, learn, remember. She noticed the almost immediately. They were hard to miss. Stood over 8 feet tall, with blue-gray scales covering their bodies and 4 arms growing from their broad shoulders. They were strong, aggressive, and proud. They believed themselves to be one of the greatest warrior species in the galaxy, and maybe they were right. Their empire controlled dozens of systems and had crushed several smaller species in wars of conquest. 3 males stood near a food stall, watching the crowd with cold yellow eyes. They wore the black armor of a trade syndicate, not soldiers but enforcers, the kind of people who broke bones for money. The biggest one was looking at her. Kept eating her noodles. She did not look away, but she did not stare either. She had learned that looking down made you seem weak, and staring made you seem challenging. The best response was no response at all. The big said something to his friends. They laughed. One of them made a gesture that did not recognize but could guess the meaning of. She finished her noodles, threw away the container, and walked back toward her cargo bay. She could feel their eyes on her back the whole way. His name was, though did not know this yet. He was 40 years old by counting, which made him middle-aged. He had served in 2 wars, killed more beings than he could remember, and now worked for the Crimson Fang Syndicate as a senior enforcer. His job was simple: make sure people paid their debts and hurt them if they did not. Hated humans. He had never actually met one before this week, but he had heard about them, and what he heard disgusted him. Humans were weak, soft creatures from a small planet called Earth. They had no claws, no scales, no venom. They could not see in the dark or hear high frequencies. They were slow, fragile, and pathetic. And yet somehow they were everywhere. In the last 50 years, humans had spread across the galaxy like a disease. They traded, explored, colonized, and never seemed to stop. They smiled too much and talked too much and acted like they belonged in spaces they had no right to occupy. They called everyone friend and apologized for everything, and never seemed to understand that the galaxy was not a friendly place. Had watched the human delegation for 3 days, 4 of them total, 2 males, 2 females. They were polite to everyone, even species that clearly despised them. They gave way in corridors instead of holding their ground. They backed down from arguments instead of fighting. They acted like prey animals trying to avoid notice. The small female was the worst. She smiled at everyone. She apologized when others bumped into her. She walked with her head down and her shoulders hunched, like she was trying to make herself even smaller than she already was. wanted to teach her a lesson about how the galaxy really worked. He mentioned this to his two companions, wasn't cruel, missing one eye from an old fight, was young and eager to prove himself. Both of them agreed that it sounded like fun. They would find her alone. They would show her what strength really meant. They would send a message to the whole human delegation, leave this station or suffer. It never occurred to that he might be wrong about humans. He had seen the small female with his own eyes. She was tiny and soft and clearly afraid. What could she possibly do against 3 warriors? He was about to find out. The next morning woke early in the small sleeping quarters attached to their cargo bay, was already up, drinking coffee and checking data pads. Sung was reviewing their contract for today's meeting, was still asleep, snoring loudly in his bunk. Ate a simple breakfast and started her work. Today she needed to check the atmospheric seals on all their cargo containers. It was boring work, but important. A single leak could ruin everything they had brought to sell. Around midday, the others left for their meeting. Sung needed to finalize the contract with a merchant house, wanted to buy some spare parts for the engine. Went along as security, still yawning from his late night. Stayed behind. Someone had to watch the cargo and she did not mind being alone. She liked the quiet. She liked the simple rhythm of work. Check this seal, record this number, move to the next container. Her mind could wander while her hands stayed busy. She did not know that 3 were walking toward her cargo bay at that very moment. She did not know that in less than an hour, her life would change forever. She just kept working, checking seals, enjoying the silence, thinking about what she might eat for dinner. The footsteps came later. Heavy footsteps, deliberate and slow, echoing through the cargo bay like a warning. Turned around and there they were. 3 warriors, standing in the entrance of her cargo bay, blocking her only exit, staring at her with cold, yellow eyes. The big one smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. And Park knew that trouble had finally found her. Stood very still. She held a data pad in her left hand and a scanner tool in her right. Her heart began to beat faster, but she kept her face calm. She had learned long ago that showing fear only made things worse. The big stepped forward. His scales were darker than the others, almost black in the dim light of the cargo bay. His 4 arms were thick with muscle, and his yellow eyes had a cruel shine to them. He moved like someone who had never been afraid of anything in his whole life. "Human," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks scraping together. A small device on his chest translated his words into English. "You are in our territory." Set down her scanner tool slowly. "This is a registered merchant bay," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "We have a lease agreement with station management." "Leases?" They made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Leases can be changed. Leases can be forgotten. Leases mean nothing when the people who hold them are too weak to defend themselves." The 2 others spread out behind their leader. One of them, the one with the missing eye, moved to the left. The young one moved to the right. They were blocking any path she might take to escape. Stayed where she was, she counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Her father had taught her this when she was a child. When you are scared, count your breaths. Fear is just a feeling. Feelings pass. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to leave," the big said. "Not just this cargo bay, this station, this sector. I want your whole pathetic species to go back to your little planet and stay there. We have legal business here. Our contract is valid for another 6 days." "I do not care about your contract." The stepped closer. He was so tall that had to look up to see his face. "I care about teaching you a lesson. Your people do not belong here. You are weak. You are soft. You smile and apologize and think that makes you friends. It does not. It makes you prey." Said nothing. There was nothing to say that would help. "What is wrong?" The tilted his head. "Cannot speak. Are you too scared to answer me, little human?" Still she said nothing. She watched his hands instead of his face. Hands told you what someone was going to do before they did it. I heard that humans were cowards, they continued. I heard that you run from every fight. I heard that a single could kill 10 of you without breaking a sweat. Is this true? He reached out with one of his lower hands and shoved her shoulder. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to make her stumble back a step. Answer me, meat. Steadied herself, she still said nothing. The laughed, she is frozen with fear, look at her shaking. But was not shaking, she was breathing, counting, waiting. His yellow eyes narrowed. He did not like being ignored. He did not like the way this small creature stood there looking at him without crying or begging. It made him angry in a way he could not explain. You think silence makes you brave, he growled. You think standing there makes you strong. Let me show you what strength really is. He raised his upper right hand. It was massive, bigger than his whole head, covered in hard scales that could crack bone. He pulled it back, ready to strike. The young said nervously, maybe we should not. Shut up. Swung his hand. It was not his full strength. He did not want to kill her, not yet. He just wanted to hurt her. He wanted to see her cry. He wanted to prove that humans were exactly as weak as he believed them to be. His hand connected with the side of her face. The sound was sharp and loud in the quiet cargo bay. His head snapped to the side. Her lips split open, and blood began to run down her chin. The force of the blow drove her to one knee. For a moment, everything was silent. Stood over her, breathing hard, feeling satisfied. This was right. This was how the galaxy worked. The strong crushed the weak. The weak accepted their place. Soon she would cry. Soon she would beg. Soon she would. Looked up and felt something he had not felt in 20 years. He felt afraid. Her eyes had changed. That was the only way he could describe it later when he tried to explain what happened. Her eyes had changed. A moment ago, they had been dark and quiet like deep water. Now they burned with something cold and terrible, something that made his scales prickle and his hearts beat faster. She was not afraid anymore. She was not trying to escape. She was not looking for help. She was looking at him the way a predator looks at prey. Rose from her knee. Blood dripped from her lip, but she did not wipe it away. She did not even seem to notice it. Her stance shifted, her weight settling differently, her hands coming up slightly. It was a small change, barely visible, but somehow it made her look completely different. She looked dangerous. You made a mistake, said quietly. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. You should have walked away. Felt a flash of rage. How dare this tiny creature threaten him? How dare she look at him like that? He had killed warriors twice her size. He had crushed skulls with his bare hands. He was not afraid of some small, soft human female. He swung again, harder this time, meaning to break bones. His fist hit nothing but air. She was not there anymore. She had moved, impossibly fast, faster than he could track, ducking under his arm and stepping inside his reach. She was close now, too close, and before he could react, her palm shot forward and struck his throat. It should not have hurt. His scales were thick. His muscles were dense. Human hands were soft and weak. But she hit something, some precise point that his armor did not cover, some weakness he did not know he had. Suddenly, he could not breathe. Stumbled backward, choking, gasping for air that would not come. His yellow eyes went wide with shock. This was not possible. This could not be happening. And then the human woman began to move, and learned the true meaning of fear. The next 20 seconds would change everything he believed about the galaxy. The next 20 seconds would teach him why even the strongest species whispered about Earth, with something like terror in their voices. The next 20 seconds would show him that he had made the worst mistake of his entire life. He had struck an Earthborn girl. And now he was going to pay for it. The cargo bay was cold and gray, filled with metal containers stacked in neat rows. The lights above flickered slightly, casting strange shadows on the walls. 3 warriors stood inside, each one bigger and stronger than any human could ever hope to be. And in the center of them stood Park, small and quiet, with blood on her lip and fire in her eyes. Was still choking from her throat strike when made his move, though was experienced. He had fought in dozens of battles. He knew that when an enemy was dangerous, you did not wait. You attacked fast and hard and ended the fight before it could begin. He lunged at her with his upper arms reaching for her throat. His claws were extended, sharp enough to tear through metal. One good grab and he would crush her windpipe like a paper tube. Did not run, she did not freeze, she did not even seem scared. She stepped toward him instead of away. This confused for half a second. Prey ran away. Prey tried to escape. Prey did not move toward the thing trying to kill it. But was not Prey. She caught his leading arm at the wrist and elbow. Her grip was stronger than it should have been, stronger than made sense for something her size. Before could understand what was happening, she twisted her body and pulled. She used his own weight against him. His momentum became her weapon. His strength became his weakness. There was a sound like dry wood breaking. Elbow bent the wrong way, the joint snapping under the pressure of his own charge. He screamed, a high, terrible sound that echoed off the metal walls and crashed into a stack of cargo containers. 2 seconds had passed. Pulled his knife. It was a good knife, sharp and long, made for cutting through armor. He had carried it for 3 years and never lost a fight while holding it. He raised it high, ready to bring it down into the human's back. But she was already turning. She had heard him move or sensed him somehow, or simply known that he would attack. Her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist before the knife could fall. Was young and strong. He pulled back, trying to free himself, but her grip was like iron. She twisted his arm in a way that sent lightning bolts of pain shooting up to his shoulder. The knife fell from his numb fingers and clattered on the floor. She did not pick it up. She did not need it. Her knee came up and drove into his stomach. The air exploded from his lungs. He folded over, gasping, and she swept his legs out from under him with a single smooth motion. He hit the floor hard, his head bouncing off the metal, and lay there stunned and helpless. 6 seconds had passed. Was starting to breathe again. His throat burned and his lungs ached, but he was a warrior. He had survived worse. He had fought through worse. He was not going to be beaten by some tiny human female who had gotten lucky with a few quick strikes. He reached for the pistol on his belt. It was a heavy weapon, designed for hands, powerful enough to punch holes in body armor. One shot would end this fight forever. His fingers closed around the grip. He began to pull it from the holster. Was on him before he cleared the weapon. She moved like water, like wind, like something not quite human. One moment she was 3 meters away. The next she was inside his guard, too close for him to use his size or his strength. Her elbow drove into his stomach. It should not have hurt. His scales were thick, his muscles hard, but she knew where to hit. She found the soft spots, the gaps in his natural armor, the places where nerves clustered close to the surface. The breath left his body in a single painful rush. He swung at her with all 4 arms, but she was not there. She ducked and weaved and slipped around his blows like smoke. He was too slow. He was too big. Every advantage he thought he had became a weakness against her speed and precision. She hit him again, and again, and again. Each strike was small and precise and devastating. She targeted his joints, his pressure points, the places where his body was weakest. She did not try to overpower him. She did not need to. She simply took him apart piece by piece like a puzzle she had solved 1,000 times before. Felt his legs go weak. He could not understand it. He was bigger. He was stronger. He had 4 arms and scales and claws. How was this happening? How was this possible? 15 seconds had passed. Grabbed his upper right arm and twisted. Pain shot through his shoulder. He stumbled off balance and she was already moving again. Her leg hooked behind his knee. her palm pressed against his chest. She pushed. 8 feet tall and 300 pounds of muscle and scale, fell backward like a tree cut at the root. He crashed to the floor with a sound like thunder, the impact driving the last of his breath from his body. Before he could move, before he could think, she was on top of him. Her boot pressed against his throat, not hard enough to kill but hard enough to make breathing difficult. His own pistol was in her hand now, taken from his holster during the fall, pointed directly at his face. 20 seconds. That was all it took. Lay by the cargo containers, whimpering and clutching his broken arm. Was still on the floor, struggling to breathe, too dazed to move. And lay on his back with a human boot on his throat and a gun in his face, completely and utterly defeated. The cargo bay was quiet now. The fight was over. Looked down at with those cold, burning eyes. Blood still dripped from her split lip. Her breathing was slightly fast, but her hand was perfectly steady on the pistol. "Now," she said softly, "let me tell you something about humans." Could not speak. He could barely breathe. All he could do was stare up at this small creature who had just destroyed everything he believed about the galaxy. 20 seconds ago, he had been certain that humans were weak. Now he knew the truth. And the truth was terrifying. The gun did not shake. Held it pointed at its face with the calm steadiness of someone who had done this before. Her boot stayed pressed against his throat, light enough to let him breathe but heavy enough to remind him that she could end him whenever she chose. Looked up at her and saw his death in her eyes. "You think you know what humans are," said. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You think we are soft, weak, easy to kill. Let me teach you something." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. In the silence of the cargo bay, every word landed like a stone. "We come from a world called Earth. It is a heavy world. The gravity pulls at everything, harder than most planets you have ever visited. We grew up carrying that weight in our bones. Our muscles developed to fight it. Our hearts grew strong to pump blood against it. What you call normal gravity we call light. Easy, almost like flying." Groaned from his spot by the cargo containers. His broken arm hung at a terrible angle, the joint shattered beyond repair. He would need surgery, probably cybernetic replacement. Glanced at him briefly, then returned her attention to. "Our world tried to kill us every day," she continued. "Predators with teeth and claws, diseases that we could not see, storms that tore apart our homes. Winters so cold that the ground froze solid and nothing would grow. We survived all of it, not because we were bigger or stronger than those things. We survived because we refused to die." Tried to speak, but her boot pressed a little harder and he stopped. "Do you know what persistence hunting is?" asked. "It is how our ancestors caught food. They could not run as fast as their prey, they could not fight it directly, so they followed it instead. They walked after it for hours, for days sometimes, never stopping, never giving up until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We did not outrun our prey, we outlasted it. That is in our blood, that is what we are." Had managed to get to his hands and knees. He was breathing hard, still dazed from hitting the floor. He looked at with wide, frightened eyes and did not try to stand. "Every human child learns how to fall," said. "We play games that break bones. We climb rocks and trees and buildings for no reason except that they are there. We invented 100 different ways to fight each other because we got bored fighting animals. We did this for fun, for entertainment. We hurt each other on purpose and called it sport." She leaned down slightly, bringing her face closer to his. "You thought I was weak because I was polite, because I smiled at strangers, because I apologized when people bumped into me. You thought kindness was the same as weakness. You thought being friendly meant I could not be dangerous." Her eyes were dark and hard, and utterly without mercy. "You were wrong." Finally found his voice. "What are you?" he rasped. "I am human," said simply. "Nothing special, nothing unusual. Back home I am ordinary, average. I am not a soldier or a fighter or a warrior. I am a cargo worker who loads boxes onto ships, and I still beat 3 of you in 20 seconds. She let that sink in for a moment. Imagine what our soldiers can do. Imagine what our special forces can do. Imagine what happens when you make humans angry, when you threaten their families, when you push them too far. Felt cold, not from the temperature but from something deeper. He had heard stories about humans. Everyone had heard stories, but he had dismissed them as lies, as propaganda, as the exaggerations of species too cowardly to admit they had lost to something so small. Now he knew better. I am going to let you live, said. I am going to let all 3 of you live. Do you know why? Shook his head slightly, careful not to move too much against the boot on his throat. Because dead people cannot deliver messages. Stood up and stepped back, keeping the pistol trained on him. You are going to go back to your syndicate. You are going to tell them what happened here today. You are going to tell them that Earth's merchant fleet is not to be touched, not on this station, not anywhere, not ever. She ejected the power cell from the pistol. It clattered to the floor, and she tossed the empty weapon onto his chest. If any of your people come near my crew again, she said, I will not be this gentle. She turned and walked toward the cargo bay entrance. Her back was completely exposed. Any one of them could have attacked her. None of them did. Was crying from the pain. Was still on his hands and knees, too scared to move, and lay on his back staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how everything he believed had been so completely wrong. At the entrance stopped. She did not turn around. One more thing, she said. Humans have a saying, do you want to hear it? Said nothing. He could not have spoken even if he wanted to. We say that those who show mercy are not weak. They are strong enough to have another choice. She paused. Remember that I chose to let you live. Remember that I did not have to. Then she was gone, her footsteps fading into the corridor outside. The cargo bay was silent. Lay on the cold floor for a long time. His body hurt in ways he had never experienced before. His pride hurt even more. 20 seconds, one small human, unarmed. He had been a fool. The whole galaxy had been fools. And somewhere on a small blue world orbiting a yellow sun, 8 billion more of these creatures were waiting, living their ordinary lives, smiling at strangers, being polite and friendly and kind, and hiding something terrible behind their soft eyes. Closed his eyes and wished he had never heard of Earth. The 3 limped away from the cargo bay like wounded animals, needed support from both and to walk. His broken arm hung useless at his side, the joint bent in a way that made other species look away in disgust. Moved slowly, still dizzy from hitting his head on the floor, and walked in silence, his throat bruised, his body aching, his mind spinning with thoughts he could not quiet. They did not talk about what happened. They could not. There were no words for the shame they felt. By the time Captain Sung Han and the others returned, they were gone. The cargo bay showed signs of the fight, scuff marks on the floor, a dent in one of the containers, a few drops of blood, but nothing was broken and nothing was missing. Sat on a cargo crate, holding a cold pack to her split lip. She looked up when her entered and gave them a small wave. Sung stopped in the entrance. He was a tall man, older than, with gray at his temples and worry lines around his eyes. He had been a captain for 15 years, and he knew trouble when he saw evidence of it. What happened? He demanded. Some locals came by, said. They wanted to deliver a message about humans not being welcome here. I delivered a different message. Stepped past the captain and looked around the cargo bay. She was small-like, with sharp eyes that noticed everything. She saw the scuff marks on the floor. She saw the dent in the container. She saw the way held herself, calm but tired, like someone coming down from a dangerous high. How many? Asked quietly. 3. Shin ran a hand over his face. He was the security officer. He was supposed to protect the crew. Instead, he had been playing cards 3 levels up while faced 3 alone. I leave for 2 hours, he said. 2 hours. They started it, said mildly. I finished it. Sung walked over and gently lifted her chin to examine her split lip. It was already swelling, and the bruise would be impressive by tomorrow. But her eyes were clear, and her breathing was normal, and she did not seem injured anywhere else. You should have called for help, he said. There was no time, and I handled it. The captain sighed. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to lecture her about protocol and safety and not fighting 3 warriors alone in a cargo bay. But he had known for 3 years. He knew what she was capable of. He knew that she had trained in martial arts since she was 5 years old, that her father had been a military instructor, that she had won championships back on Earth before deciding she would rather see the stars than stay in a fighting ring. Are they dead? He asked. No, injured, they will heal. Will they come back? Thought about the look in his eyes as she stood over him. The fear, the confusion, the terrible understanding. No, she said, they will not come back. News travels fast on a space station. By the evening cycle, everyone knew what had happened in Cargo Bay 7. A small human woman, alone and unarmed, had beaten 3 enforcers in less than a minute. One had a broken arm. One had a concussion. The third had bruises on his throat in the shape of human fingers. The story grew as it spread, as stories always do. Some versions said she had fought 5. Others said 10. Some said she had used weapons. Others said she had killed them all and hidden the bodies. But the truth was impressive enough. The merchants who had been difficult in negotiations suddenly became very cooperative. They offered better prices, faster delivery, and extra services at no additional cost. The deal that had been taking a week was finished in a single afternoon. Other species made room for the human delegation in the corridors. They nodded respectfully when the humans passed. They did not bump into them or crowd them or make insulting gestures behind their backs. Even the station security chief came to pay his respects. His name was, and he was an insect-like being with a hard shell and multiple eyes. He had worked security on the Crimson Dawn for 30 years. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. Found Captain Han in the cargo bay, reviewing inventory with his crew. He asked for a private word. The captain agreed. I came to apologize, said. His translator rendered his clicking voice into flat English. They should not have attacked your crew member. They will be punished according to station law. Thank you, Sung said carefully. We appreciate that. I also came to understand. His multiple eyes focused on across the cargo bay. I have heard stories about your species. I thought they were exaggerated, propaganda, lies told by species too embarrassed to admit they had lost to something so small. He paused. I was wrong. Sung said nothing. He waited. They say humans conquered their world not by being the strongest, continued. They say you were never the strongest. Your planet had creatures much bigger, much more dangerous than you, but you survived anyway. You hunted them. You outlasted them. You spread across every continent, adapted to every climate, survived every disaster. They say you fought each other constantly, war after war, but always survived, always came back stronger. That is more or less accurate, Sung said. They say your soldiers can fight for days without sleep, that your wounded keep fighting even when they should be dead, that you never surrender, never give up, never stop until the battle is won or you are physically incapable of continuing. Some of us, not all. Looked at again. She was checking cargo seals, her data pad in one hand, completely focused on her work. She looked small and soft and harmless. That one said, the female who fought is she a soldier? No, she is a cargo worker. She moves boxes. Was silent for a long moment. Then the stories are true, he said finally. If an ordinary human can do what she did, then the stories must be true. He turned to leave, then stopped. Captain Han, a word of advice. Yes. Do not stay on this station much longer. The Crimson Fang Syndicate has a long memory. They will not forget what happened today. They may seek revenge when your crew is more vulnerable. I understand. Thank you for the warning. Nodded and left. Sung walked over to where was working. She looked up at his approach, her split lip now hidden under a small bandage. We are leaving tomorrow, he said quietly. Can you be ready? I can be ready tonight if you need me. The captain smiled. Tomorrow is fine, and yes. Good work today. Your father would be proud. Something flickered in his eyes, something soft and sad and far away. Then it was gone, replaced by her usual calm expression. He taught me well, she said. That night, as the Crimson Dawn station turned slowly in the light of the gas giant, stood at a viewing window and looked out at the stars. Her lips still hurt, her hands still ached from the fight, but she felt calm, peaceful, at rest. She thought about Earth, about the small house where she grew up, about her father teaching her to fight in the backyard, patient and kind, explaining that the goal was never to hurt people but to protect the ones she loved. She thought about the who had struck her, about the fear in his eyes when he realized his mistake. She did not enjoy hurting people, she never had, but she was human and humans protected their own. That was the lesson her father had taught her. That was the truth written in her bones. Be kind, be gentle, be good. But when someone threatens your family, when someone attacks the ones you love, when someone mistakes your kindness for weakness, show them what humans really are. Smiled slightly, her reflection ghostly in the window glass. Outside, the stars waited. And somewhere in the galaxy, the story of what happened in Cargo Bay 7 was spreading, growing, taking on a life of its own. Another reminder. Another warning. Another reason to think twice before striking an Earthborn girl.